On Section 5, Court of Appeals, under 5.15, those were two positions that had been requested, and the subcommittee looked at that, reduced that request by just a little bit to match the Supreme Court requests. And then also at 5.16, you'll see an elimination of some funds there that were one-time funds requested in fiscal year 14. Under Judicial Council, Section 6, 6.4.1, this will be an item that you'll see in a couple of different positions or a couple of different agencies here in the judiciary dealing with event coordinators or training coordinators. Chairman Powell's subcommittee has asked for an audit to be done to figure out a better way to consolidate some of those positions or those event coordinators into one position. So at this point, we're waiting to see what the results of that audit is before we make a recommendation. 6.54, the subcommittee also eliminated the funds there for that Family Law Information Center. That's a pilot project. We're still waiting to see and make sure that that's doing what we actually want it to do before we expand that pilot project as well. Excuse me while I get my glasses. 6.5.8 deals with judicial retirement, and we just made a slight reduction there to meet the actual increase in need. Moving on to the next changes that you'll see that were beyond what the statewide changes were. Is looking in Section 8, prosecuting attorneys under DAs. There'd been a request there for 35 additional assistant district attorneys. Those were thought to be needed for the accountability courts program. The subcommittee felt at this time they were not actually needed, so we took a reduction there. Also at 8.26, you'll see a reduction in travel to actually recognize the actual amount of travel there. 8.27, we had two requests for two new Superior Court judgeships, one in Coweta Judicial Circuit and the other one in the Waycross Circuit. What we're doing there is putting in 3 months for each of those, and our friends in the Senate, we hope, will put the additional 3 months in. Normally, we pick one, they pick one, but we just, after looking at that over the last couple of years, felt like that we should go ahead and recognize both as we send our budget across to the Senate. 8.35, again, a request for some additional pay raises, but they were not deemed necessary at this time. Some other reductions in Section 9 of Superior Courts. Reduction for operating expenses, another position that was not deemed essential at this point in time. And then a couple of years ago, or excuse me, last year in fiscal year 14, all agencies were asked statewide to absorb a 1% increase in state health benefit plan, and the courts came back and asked for that 1%. We didn't give that to any other agencies, so we're saying that they would absorb that as well. Under judicial administrative districts, 9.23, a reduction in the ad there for operating funds, and then you'll see another 1% adjustment for the SHBP there. Under 9.34, some raises for about 30 secretaries who have been without raises for the longest period of time, and so felt like that those were a group of folks that were not going to be recognized through the other 1% program, so they need to be added in as well. Under Supreme Court Section 10, 10.111, you'll see a slight reduction of $17,438. That eliminates about half the funds that were appropriated in fiscal year 14 for digitizing paper records. As they complete that task, that reduction is available to take there. Moving on to Section 12, DOAS. In changing how we use the Aviation Authority in selling the state planes and going to a lease agreement, use of those planes have dropped off, or the need for those planes and flight time has dropped off. We're just making an adjustment. That adjustment was also made in the amended budget as well, so we're just carrying it through and annualizing it in this budget. Section 13, Department of Ag, 1325, an add of about $170,000 there in consumer protection, and a change in the wording there to allow the commissioner to be able to do merit raises and starting salary adjustments for some of the most critical people that we have out in the field doing consumer protection in food safety and meat inspection as well. 1334, as you know, budget had recommended that Soil and Water Conservation Commission be rolled under the Department of Ag. And while I think the end game will be eventually to, as legislation moves through the process, that the commission will actually be administratively attached there. And what we've done there is by shifting some positions, we can take advantage of that administratively attaching of that agency and recognize some savings in personnel costs there as well. 1344, those of you that are in the ag community and those of you that go to a lot of restaurants across the state of Georgia have seen a program called Georgia Grown just explode across our state with a number of chefs and restaurants and small family farms and large family farms for that matter. That program has exploded across our state, and we're one of the few states in the country that puts absolutely no state funding into that, but we're recommending an add of $150,000 for that program. Right now it's struggling to maintain itself as a privately funded or a participant funded program, but we believe that for the largest industry in the state that's a small investment that we can make that will have multiplied returns. 1364, all of the 13.6 section deals with soil and water conservation. Again, that is the move of administratively attaching that agency there. Section 1433 under financial institution supervision. Again, an attempt to go toward the market-based salaries. We felt like since on many of these that we've had to try to stagger in over the last couple of years dealing with DNR and others, that in order to be fair to everyone or all of our employees, that it should be a staggered approach as well. So this is about half of what their ask was, and then we'll look to do the other half next year as well. Under 15.29, you'll see an add there of a 0.5% increase for developmental disability providers. This will allow them to cover increased administrative costs and to adhere to requirements of ACA, and then also to hire and train additional staff. I think you'll hear a lot of folks that'll be very happy or grateful for that as well. Under 15.7, under DBHDD, 15.7.3, the fetal alcohol syndrome screening and treatment program was moved from the Marcus Center of Autism to the Emory University School of Medicine, and that $190,000 add will be able to be matched with a federal $190,000 as well. Still in section 15.11.5, you'll see a reduction there, and that's just a cost savings from closing one of the state hospitals under the federal order. 15.13.1, you'll see an addition there to take 64 more positions off the waiting list. And so every dollar we put in, Georgia taxpayers will receive about $1.61 in benefits. So we're just adding 64 additional slots there and reducing that waiting list. Moving on to Section 17, Department of Community Health. 17.17, eliminating some one-time funds there for a Navigant contract to study the managed care expansion. 17.23 and 17.33 Slight increases there on the Board of Dentistry and the Board of Pharmacy. Operating, of course, they raised their fees considerably, and we're just trying to help recognize some of those additional funds there. 1746, dealing with AHEC, or Area Health Education Centers. This deals with rotations of residency students. That will increase the residency slots by about 50 beds, or about 400 rotations total across the state. 1745, I skipped over just then. We're proposing to add 2 of the federally qualified health centers, one for behavioral health in Gilmer County and one for community health in Clay County. A $50,000 add at 1747 for the Southeastern Firefighters Burn Foundation, and a $250,000 add at 1748 dealing with children that do not qualify for the Katie Beckett waivers. Easter Seals, Champions for Children program has been instrumental in picking up these kids in that gap, and so we're just trying to help a little bit there. Under 1753, back in 2003, there was a licensure statute passed for adult daycare centers. We've not been able to trigger that program and start it. That is becoming an issue across the state. Subcommittee decided that $321,000 would kick off that program and begin that adult daycare licensure process to start as well. 1771, an add of $566,000 there, dealing with SOURCE and CCSP programs. And again, one of those, it's about a 5% add that deals with elderly waiver programs as well. 1777, an additional reduction there, dealing with some savings that can be recognized through the PARIS program, or the Patient Assistance Reporting Information System. I know all these acronyms kind of run together from time to time. They do for me anyway. Then looking at 1771, every year as hospitals bill for Medicaid, there's always an adjustment, kind of an audit process that goes back in and looks at those reimbursements and see if there's some funds that are receivable or recoverable back to the state. We've recognized those funds as well in a reduction. And then on 17712, dealing with the Patient-Centered Outcome Initiative, that program is not operational until fiscal year 15, so either in the amended or in fiscal year 16 budget, then we'll recognize that and do what we need to do there. Looking at 1787, 1788, what you see there is just a breakout. Again, a House priority for several years, dealing with planning for healthy babies. All we're doing there is breaking it out so it can be seen and recognized, and so anyone that has a concern there will realize that we are still doing that program. And again, 17814 deals with that same program as well. It recognizes the funds there. 17815, supplemental drug rebates. It's a program through low-income Medicaid claims and CMOs that we can do some cost recovery there. 1786 deals with core. That you'll see pick back up in public health. What we did is just do a move there and then recognize some tobacco settlement funds to do that. 1794 is another recognition of savings through the PARIS program. 1798, hospital settlements again. 1710.4, dealing with the changes in the state health benefit plan. That is an adjustment in language and recognition of using some reserves to help pick up the cost dealing with that. 1710.10 deals with that issue, as well as 1013, 1014. Then 1710.15, the subcommittee, Chairman Parrish's subcommittee felt strongly that, and many of you have expressed to us, that we have state employees, teachers, other state employees that have wished or asked for multiple choices on vendors for health care. And what we're doing there is just putting language in the budget, asking DCH that we would like to see multiple contracts out there on a statewide and regional basis is for our employees to be able to choose through SHBP. 1712.3 deals with Houston Medical Center. Of course, the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, they're going into their final year of phase-in of that program there, and so what we're doing is adding to the base there for that program. And then 1712.4 on the physician's workforce capitation on residency. By adding $333 in state funds, it'll allow 1,326 of those residency slots to get an increase in the federal match of $1,000 per slot. So the total funds there is a little over $1.3 million with the federal match there as well. 1714.1 deals with the Morehouse School of Medicine. As UPL, or upper payment limit dollars, are going to be decreasing over the next several years, we've been using that program to supplement the teaching program at Morehouse. Of course, Morehouse and Mercer both are creatures of the General Assembly, those programs to train doctors to go in rural and underserved areas. And so what we're doing here is the beginning or a phase-in of a change of the way that that money is drawn down, and also the recognition of the agreement through the provider fee that we passed last year to allow more money to go back to the hospitals as well. 1751 is increasing the number of loan repayment awards out there. Their need exceeds the amount of funds that they have. They were able to fund 17 currently. They had 35 eligible. So these all go to counties with less than 35,000 residents as well if those doctors decide to go there to serve. 1718.3, providing funds for one more additional inspector there. That individual is I consider kind of unique because they are post-certified and a licensed pharmacist. So those are few and far between, so they are somewhat costly to find. Under Section 18, Department of Corrections, dealing with the County Jail Subsidy Program. Again, the House had taken a position in the amended budget to raise that reimbursement rate from $22 to $43, and we're just putting that same language in there under 18.2.2. Under 18.6.4, a recognition of savings by paroling medically fragile inmates to the state. It saves about 2/3 of their medical cost when they're put into nursing homes or not still in the prison system, I guess is a better way to put it. Department of Defense, a reduction there for one legal counsel position. The subcommittee did not deem that necessary at this point in time. Section 20, Driver Services. You'll see some additions and changes and some recognitions of several things there. One of those dealing with the Fort Benning Customer Service Center to help with some operating costs as well as examiners and the supervisor there. Some part-time positions the governor put in, 53 part-time positions to be used in high-volume areas. The kickoff of the increase in rent for a move of the Fulton County Customer Service Center. The House added $100,000 to open a new service center in Bainbridge to an area that those individuals are having to drive a good little ways to be able to do their examinations there. That will be a local partnership with the building there on the local level, and it'll be a similar proposal or similar operating model to that at Fort Benning. And then on 20.2.7, that's just the recognition of a reduction of one-time funds to upgrade everybody in Department of Driver Services to DSL and T1 line, or 2 T1 lines. So that has been done. Those funds are no longer necessary. No changes under DECAL. Section 22, Economic Development. Subcommittee was looking there to take advantage of several matches that are out there and available. One of those deals on line 22.3.3, National Endowment for the Arts federal grant, putting an additional $25,000 in the state base there to be able to draw down additional federal funds matches as well. 22.8.3, the elimination of one-time ad there for a special project last year. 22.8.4, dealing with the Historic Chattahoochee Commission. Alabama puts in considerably more than we do into that compact. We're just trying to step up to get to something similar to what Alabama does to hold up our side of the bargain there. 22.8.5, dealing with Georgia Historical Society markers and the Historical Library Program. It brought to our attention there are about 100 and the number escapes me, 162 or 182 historical markers across the state that are just missing. And they've not had the funds to be able to replace those. Of course, y'all have seen those roadside markers and understand that they weigh a lot, so that means they're worth a lot in scrap metal. And unfortunately, we have some folks that have been entrepreneurs, and I want to get my hands around them. But anyway, we will help them understand. But just trying to catch back up on some of those replacements there. And then on 22.8.6, Georgia Humanities Council, they grant small grants to local communities all over the state for arts programs that involve adults and children, and just felt like it was something that was worthy and worthwhile. Section 23, DOE. First ad under Ag Ed's 23.14 is dealing with extended day, extended year. That's just annualizing the ad that we put in the amended budget. 23.15, increasing and expanding the programs, Ag Ed programs in Murray County and Thomas County. Proposing to add a young farmer teacher in Thomas County. They've come to us with a request for that. Local school board has already put their match in. 23.51, an increase for communities and schools. Any of you that have one of those programs out there, the 39 affiliates across the state, understand the wonderful work they do in dropout prevention, catching kids that have gotten behind under a normal high school setting and getting them caught up and actually getting them ahead of where they were and getting them to stay into school and complete their schooling. And a lot of those kids wind up that they complete ahead of time, and many come in a year or a year and a half behind once they get there. Georgia Virtual School, 23.8.4. Just a slight reduction there, but there will continue to be course development for K-5 courses, specifically in grades 3 through 5, math, English, and science. 23.8.5, transferring those blended learning trainers over from the virtual school over to Reese's, so you'll see that ad appear here in just a second. 23.11 under non-QB grant formula grants, looking at sparsity. This is a one-time hold harmless on the sparsity grants. Of course, they were the number of school systems that qualify for that increased under DOE's kind of reevaluation of that whole program. And so we didn't feel like it was fair to dump that on local school systems all at once. So we're putting in the one-time hold harmless funds to let them adjust and be ready for when that actually kicks in next year. And then 23.11.4 deals with RTCs, residential treatment centers. Again, kids that have behavioral problems that can't be taught in a normal school setting, and recognizing the new formula that was developed last year and changing the parapro rate to 1 to 5. And there are about 652 students that are served through that program. 23.14.1, just a true up of actual numbers there. Equalization is still fully funded, and this does serve 119 systems across the state. 23.16.2, the increase in T&E, training and experience. Again, just a true up there. 23.16.6, a true up there as well. Under 23.17.3, you'll see an increase for technology support, and then you'll see the recognizing of the money for the virtual school blended learning trainers there at 23.17.4. 23.18.5, the committee didn't feel at this point that additional position was needed and that current staffing levels were adequate as well. 23.19.4, dealing with training and experience under GNETs, another true up calculation. 23-23-5 under Technology and Career Education. Again, the recognition of the funds that we put in for extended day, extended year in the amended budget. 23-23-6, an increase in funds for vocational industry certification. 23-24-6, dealing with the testing program. We've made an adjustment there, a slight reduction. The contract has not been issued yet. It has to go through a pilot program initially, and then the program will be bid. And as we get the contract, then whatever we need to do, we can adjust in the amended to true up those numbers as well. Not saying that reduction is no indication that we do not support the program. It's just that we don't feel that all of those funds are necessary at this point in time. No changes in ERS. Section 25, State Forestry Commission. 25-3-3, 2 years ago, we started a program under DNR and GBI on a career ladder. The Forestry Commission is in the same position with a lot of their forestry rangers. And so we're looking at that program as well as a stepped in or staggered approach. And what we're putting in there is 1/2 of the need to actually kind of get them up to a study that was done dealing with employee retention and starting salaries as well. This money will help us with cost avoidance of about $1 million in training annually because of new employees having to be trained. Also, new employees there in forestry are the #1 workman's comp claims within that agency because of just not necessarily having been around that equipment or what they're doing. So what we're trying to do is do something to retain those individuals as best we can. Moving on to section 26. 26-11-3 is the adding of one investigator position. They have a significant backlog, and the budget there had been cut about 25% since 2003. So they had significant staff attrition and some vacancies there, so we're trying to help them. Under section 27, Human Services, Speaker Pro Tem Jones came to us with a proposal, something that we have not done in several years, and that's increase the clothing allowance for those kids in foster care. Currently, if you're aged newborn through 12 years old, you get about $206 a year for clothing. 13 and over get $309. Well, if you have a high school student, you know $309 does not go very far in buying clothing for them. So what we're doing here is recognizing or increasing that clothing allowance for both categories of children by $100. So you'll see 0 or newborn through 12 years old go to $306 a year, and teenagers then will go to $409 a year. 27.6.7, everyone that I know of has a court-appointed special advocate group or CASA group in your area, and this will help them expand to represent 48 of the 49 judicial districts across the state. (27-12-3) deals with Meals on Wheels, program that unfortunately had to be cut or reduced funding for several years. We know that they have a huge need, and so what the subcommittee there has proposed is a $750,000 increase. Those will deal with delivered meals and adult daycare center meals as well. Moving to section 28, no changes, Insurance Commissioner. 29, GBI. House Bill 872 from the 2012 session established or created a mental theft database. Yet, like many bills that we pass, at the end says subject to appropriations. Well, we've not been able to fund that since creation of the program. What we're doing there is putting $150,000 in for a contract with a vendor to create that program. Metal theft is still a huge problem across our state. You've heard it from anywhere from churches to real estate agents to farmers to anyone that has some type of metal out there of value that they have no way of providing 24-hour, 7-day a week, 24-hour day, 7-day a week security for. And so we're trying to, again, curtail that activity of that group of entrepreneurs. 2934, 2943, again, deal with the career ladder issue that we started 2 years ago, and this is the third and final installment in that, bringing those individuals up to parity with our friends in Georgia State Patrol. Under Section 30, Juvenile Justice, 30.1.7, we're annualizing an adjustment we made in the amended budget on the out-of-home care providers by 3%, and that brings DJJ up to what Department of Human Services pays for that same service. Department of Labor, 31, no changes. 32, Department of Law, 3215. We'd added two time-limited attorneys to help with the APS teacher cases. And what we're doing there is leaving those funds in. That case is not complete, but once it is completed, we know the Attorney General has a backlog as well. So we're trying to kind of pick up for some of the adjustments we've had to make there over the last several years as well. Under Section 33, DNR, an adjustment on the merit-based pay increases at 3311. A true up there, a true up under 3351 under historic preservation. Those, as they were categorized originally, were in the wrong places, so we've fixed that. 3364, again, DNR law enforcement rangers, we did the career ladder program for. This is third and final year there on that. Again, an adjustment at 3371 on the merit-based. 3391 deals with merit-based. 3393 deals with the career ladder issue as well. Moving on to Section 36, public defenders. They had continued to have some furlough days, and the governor and subcommittee recognized that they need to eliminate those furlough days, so that eliminates the 3 remaining days that they had there. 3623, again, the the adjustment and for the positions that were added last year for the 2 new judicial circuits. We just reduced that to meet the true cost and to annualize it. And again, 3624, the 2 that we're adding this year, the recognition of those funds as well. Section 37, Public Health, 3713, that ties back to CORE that I mentioned a while ago, and that's movement recognition of those funds there, and dealing with the tobacco settlement money use for that program, of which it was intended for. 3711.2. A few years ago, we tackled the issue of redoing the formula for the grant and aid to your local public health centers. And so this is the 4th year of a 7-year installment program there on the hold harmless there. Trauma Care Network under 3714.4. As you know, the super speeder penalty and driver's license reinstatement fees are intended to go to the Trauma Care Network. Chairman Parrish and I have met with them several times over this last year, and those of you that across the state knowing the need of level 1 or level 2 trauma centers, or just having a trauma center be a level 3 or 4 trauma center, they have done some incredible work over the last several years of increasing those numbers. And Chairman Parrish and I learned in that meeting, we've all thought and have, I guess, a kind of a wrong impression about a level 1 center, thinking that that's what you actually want to strive to get to. Well, in our conversations, I guess it was first part of January, Butch, with them. If you have a level 2 trauma center, you have all of the same services minus an education component that a level 1 center has. The level 1 center has an education component, but as far as 24-hour specialists and all the other medical necessity pieces in a level 1 center, a level 2 center has those. We've seen an increase, a net increase of 2 level 1s and 6 level 2 trauma centers in the last year and a half to 2 years. So my hat goes off and applaud them for the work that they've been doing with limited funds, and I appreciate our hospitals that have been out there and willing to participate in that program as well. Yes, we still have some holes across the state, and they are actively working with those hospitals in those areas to increase that program as well. Under Section 38, Department of Public Safety, an adjustment on the merit-based pay system there, a slight increase. Then some increased operating expenses for Bartow County Post 3 under 3846, some additions of some troopers there. 3861, the merit-based was not necessary in that particular category. It will be covered through the other adjustments that will be made. Section 39 PSC deals with auditors or cost review oversight for Plant Vogel. The federal government does all the safety work as far as safety audits and dealing with those concerns. It falls upon the state to be the one to monitor the costs. And so the PSC, of course, has taken several cuts over the last few years, and they were understaffed to be able to provide oversight there, so there's a small add for that position. Section 40, Board of Regents. As you know, over the last couple of years, we've focused on trying to rebuild our Ag Experiment Station research professionals across the state. Again, it goes without saying, #1 industry in the state, so we intend to keep that industry #1 in this state. So you see some additions at 40.1.4 and 40.1.5 for some additional scientists there as well. 40.7.5 under Archives. In the move from Archives to Board of Regents, there were some funds held in reserve there that were donations, and so what we're doing is recognizing those donations being moved from the SOS office over to Regents for those individuals that had made contributions, and just making sure that those are shown there. 40.11.1 Marine Resources Extension, an adjustment there on the merit-based formula. And then 40.13.5, there is a proposed new funding formula for libraries out there, and what we're saying is wait until fiscal year 16 before that is implemented. As you know, the longtime director of that program is retiring, and there'll be a new director coming in. We just felt that it would be fair to the new director to allow that person to come in and evaluate that and move forward if necessary at that point in time. 40.14.2, slight reduction in need there for the GME program. 40.14.3 is a shift to a different category. You'll see it pick back up here in just a second for a Rome teaching program with GRU. That picks up in 40.14.5. You'll see the transfer there. And also under 40.14.6, I don't know why that's hanging me up this morning. As everyone knows, the film production industry in our state is exploding. Regents currently doesn't have a program to tackle many of the areas of needs there. This will be a partnership actually between Regents and TCSG to develop a curriculum, a teaching program for that workforce training. So the majority brought that to our attention. That will also be done in partnership with a private individual that is willing to actually build the facilities to help us get ready to start teaching that program at some point in the future, very near future. 40.18.10, the EDGE program, or the Competitive EDGE program for small business incubators, expanding that program across the state. It's been incredibly successful. Many of you may have seen that in your areas, and what we're doing there is saying that we have an interest in helping support entrepreneurs as well. 40.1811, the recognition of the funds that were moved from the wrong category a few minutes ago. Moving on to Department of Revenue under Section 41, if you'll go to 4111.4. The Georgia Ag Tax Exemption Program that was passed under House Bill 386 a couple of years ago dealing with ag exemptions went from being basically no way to track the program to giving a card to individuals that qualify. We know that we've heard of some concerns across the state of some minor abuses. So what we're doing here is we've directed the Department of Agriculture to take part of those gate receipts, then to contract with DOR for some auditors to go in and look at those cases and see if there are actual abuses. We think that the individuals that may be abusing some of that program, once they find out that there's going to be somebody looking over their shoulder, many of those abuses will disappear. You've heard concerns from probably your boards of education and your boards of commissioners over that program. So we're just wanting to try to get a handle on things there and make sure that that is actually not occurring, or if it is, those individuals are found. Section 42 under Secretary of State. Under 4214, 4234, 4244, and 4254, just a recognition of some reserves the Secretary of State was actually holding to implement and buy some equipment for some licensing programs. What we've done there is actually helped him expedite that process. When you look in the back at the bond program or package, you'll see an ad there for the equipment to allow him to actually step that forward and kick it off ahead of time. So we're just telling or asking him to recognize the reserves that he had set aside in those program areas. Section 43, dealing with Soil and Water Conservation Commission. You'll see there it winds up with zero totals at the bottom. And again, that goes back to the movement or the administratively attaching of that agency to the Department of Ag. Under Section 44, Student Finance Commission. 4411, dealing with Excel program. We made an adjustment, a cut there, because actually we will know what that number will be in the amended, and we'll make the adjustment to actual cost at that point in time. 4410.1, a small reduction in the low interest loan program with the creation of what will be rolling out with Representative Evans's bill and Chairman Earhart's bill. We anticipate a lower need there, and so we've made a small adjustment there. And under 4411.2, just recognizing some additional lottery funds that will be used for the TCSG program as well. Teacher retirement, Section 45, no changes. TCSG, Section 46, 4646, just a recognition that that books are not provided to other individuals, and so what we've done there on duly enrolled is say that we want to keep them on parity with the other students. So we've reduced that amount for the books there, so we can keep everybody on the same level. Section 47. $47.64 deals with airport aid. As y'all know, that is a very good program for economic development across this state, and that add of $4.45 million goes into that match program that allows for the 95-5 match, 5% state, 5% local, 90% federal. And so we've just added some funds there. The goal there is to basically allow for more airport aid. Section 48, no changes under Veteran Services. Section 49, under Workman's Comp, you'll see language at 49.25. And it just lowers the amount of the assessment there that they're required to remit back to the state treasury. And Section 50, I know many of y'all have probably been waiting to look at that. It's kind of like Santa Claus coming on Christmas Day for some. It's kind of like the Grinch coming for others, I'm sure. As you know, in bonds, we've worked the last 3 or 4 years with the governor on the debt management plan. And so what we'd agreed to do several years ago is the Senate would have $50 million, the House would have $50 million to use in projects. I've got a stack in my office of requests, probably 1.5 feet, 2 foot tall, and if your project is not in here, it does not mean that it does not have merit. It just comes down to trying to figure out which project makes the best sense at this point in time with local input or local matches that are made as well. So for those that don't see a project in there that you've talked to us about, I'm sorry. It doesn't mean that we didn't want to do it. It just means that we ran out of money before we could get to everything we needed to get to. At that point, Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to answer questions.
There's Stacky Gun. Let's see. Number 59. Seat 59, I can't see from back here. That would be Mr. Wells, Representative Wells. You have a question?
Mr. Chairman, while they're thinking if they've got a question, I want to first thank our House Budget Office staff. Our gang has done an incredible job this year. We've had the accelerated schedule, and they have been spot on in getting their work done, proofing their work, making sure that everything's the way it's supposed to be. And my hat goes off to Martha and her gang. Without them, we would not be able to do what we do. I certainly would not be able to stand up here in front of you and explain any of this with any iota of confidence without their help. I want to thank our subcommittee chairs and our committees that have worked diligently. I do feel like, even though through the accelerated schedule, this is one of the most thoroughly vetted budgets that we've done. I know, at least during my now 4 years as chairman, I think all of our subcommittee chairs would tell you that they understand and know more about their individual budgets this year than they ever have. And I want to thank them and their committees and all of you, because all of you serve on the subcommittees in some shape, form, or fashion, for your hard work as well. Mr. Chairman, have any other questions?
Yes, Representative Parsons. Chairman Parsons.
We got a new operator up there, so
It's on. Shows it's on.
Thank you. Y'all have done a great job. I appreciate it. I got a question. I think you said this. I think you told us this probably at the beginning. You said 40% of the, I guess 40% of the increase in funding from 2015 over 2014 will go to local education fund.
goes into QB.
What is that? I think you said this. What is that amount? What amount?
$314.3 million.
314. Okay. Would you answer one question?
Yes, sir.
You had mentioned on the super speeder fund that the amount of money comes into that, and $1 million going to the promise. And I certainly agree with that. Just out of curiosity, are there other places, I'm looking quickly and can't find something like that. Are there other places in the budget where we actually have a amount of money coming in from the super speeder fund going to some specific?
No, the money comes in, of course, by the Constitution, goes into the general fund, and then we appropriate out of the general fund dollars to the Trauma Commission, and that's what those were set aside, or what those were theoretically set aside for. We can't do set-asides through law because we have constitutional prohibition for that. So that money comes in the general fund, then we appropriate back out to.
So then my last question is, do you know how much we actually are getting in from the speakers?
About $18.6 million a year.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there are no other lights lit.
Well, that's good. I imagine with everyone expecting the weather coming in, that kids are sleeping in this morning, and there are plenty of other places in the state of Georgia that lights are not lit. Hopefully, as the ice storms hit, as predicted, that will not be a chronic case across North Georgia, but do say a prayer for our DOT folks, our DNR, Department of Corrections, Public Safety, National Guard, all of those that will be out there working over the next 2 or 3 days, our line crews with our local EMCs and Georgia Power and municipal electric operators, because there will be some folks out there in some miserable conditions, I'm afraid. I hope it doesn't wind up being as bad as what it could be, but just say a prayer for those folks. Mr. Chairman, I hope we have a motion.
Well, we have a motion and a second. Before we vote, let me say to you, Mr. Chairman, on behalf of everybody, we thank you for the work that you have done, the long hours you've put in. And on behalf of the chairs of the subcommittees, we hope you'll put your whip up now. Is there any further discussion?
I think you need a second. Okay. Just clarifying, just make sure.
Yes, we had a second. Hearing no more further discussion, those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign.
Just to note real quick, the documents will be posted on the website here shortly. And if there are no further business for the committee, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Good job, sir.